Do you want to kick it off?
Shall I kick it off?
Yeah, let's do it. I always kick it off. I think it's your turn.
Hello and welcome to the OG Creatives Podcast, episode 4. I am Will and I'm here with my very good friend Miki. Say hello, Miki.
Yo, hello, Will. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. I am mega excited. We have very exciting news today. We have a guest with us. This guy is a legend.
Who is it?
He's a legend in his own lifetime. He's basically one of my idols, which might seem a bit strong, but I'm not really into your Kim Kardashian or your Britney Spears. So this guy is my Britney Spears. Not only does he do incredible, innovative work, but he's kind enough to share his knowledge on YouTube for everyone else. And as my colleague said, please let him know that without people like him on YouTube, I wouldn't have a career. So without further ado, here is Jonathan Winbush.
Hey, what up, what up? Winbush here. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. I greatly appreciate that intro. That's probably the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me, comparing me to like a Kardashian or to a Britney Spears. So.
No, it's true though. I was like, I was so hyped. I was trying to work out like why I'm sort of so hyped about it. And it's because, I just, all you guys who do all the training and stuff, you help us every day on YouTube and things. So it means a lot to me. Yeah.
I greatly appreciate it. Makes it all worth it because, we don't make too much money doing these tutorials. It's more just, a passion for giving back to the community that's given back to me for so many years throughout my career, actually before YouTube, like whenever I'd be interning or even just working at different studios with artists, we would all just, talk to each other. That's how we, transfer different information and stuff. And just throughout my career, I've worked under some of the best artists that you can, ask for, and them sharing their knowledge to me for free. After a couple of years, I'm like, how can I give back to the community? So YouTube is pretty much like the perfect platform for giving out, and just, anybody that wants the information is there for the taking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, you can't learn everything. There's so much to know in the motion graphics world. So you have to get that from other people. So yeah, massively appreciate it. But I wanted to start, if you can you just tell us a little bit in your own words about what you do and, what you're interested in?
Yeah, so as you alluded to before, my name is Jonathan Winbush. I'm a motion graphics artist. I primarily work in television and movies. I've been doing this professionally since around 2006. Just like a small recap on my career, like I started interning under Adam Sandler, of all people, over there at Happy Madison. Did like 6 months internship with him, and then he liked me well enough to bring me on full time. So I stuck out with those guys at Happy Madison / Sony for about 3 more years. And from there, freelanced around Hollywood a little bit, landed at Warner Brothers, worked there for like another 3 to 4 years. And then I decided to go out and start my own company, which is Winbush Immersive. And that's what I do today. So yeah, I primarily do motion graphics for television, movies, and immersive tech as of most recently, like with VR, AR, and the NFTs.
Yeah, the full range. Would you call yourself a generalist, motion graphics generalist, or?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Like, I don't really take on titles too much just because I'm just always experimenting and just diving in. Like we were talking about Unreal Engine earlier, that's not typically something like a motion graphics artist would use. And so I just kind of, I don't know. I guess you could say jack of all trades, lunatic sometimes.
I wanted to get into that because I'm sort of in a similar boat. So my title was digital guru for a while because it was just the only thing I could come up with to kind of.
Right.
But yeah, I want to ask, like, what kind of sparked your passion for motion graphics? Can you remember like how you got into it, the first things that excited you about it?
Yeah, so it's one of those things I totally fell into by chance. Like originally I wanted to get into game creation somehow. Like I grew up on Commodore 64, Tandy 1000, Atari 2600. And so like gaming has been a part of my life ever since I could remember.
OG.
And it's one of those things, like when I grew up, I wanted to either be an astronaut or make video games. And once I saw how small the actual capsules were that the astronauts went to space with, like I'm claustrophobic. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll get in the video games. I'm too big for this. And so, I applied to a local school here in the States. It was called the Art Institute and it had a program for game design. And I can't draw worth a lick. and they saw my drawing portfolio and they're like, yeah, we're not going to accept you in the game arts program, but we are starting a new program called motion graphics / visual effects. And so they took me on, a tour of the campus, and they had built like this brand new green screen facility. They were like recreating shots from like the original Matrix movie, which was one of my all-time favorites. So that immediately stuck with me. And I was like, you know what, I'll give this VFX and motion graphics thing a shot. And, I went through my first semester and I kind of just, fell in love with all the tools that we're using, like combustion and 3ds Max and, all the things that were out back then. And so I kind of just, stuck it through, got my bachelor's degree, and the rest is history there.
Yeah. Do you remember some of those first projects that you did when you were getting into it? Can you remember any?
Yeah. So, the thing I think that really got me into After Effects was we had a broadcast design class. And this is where we were supposed to like just make like a fictional network and then design like a motion graphics package, for, like the promos and coming up next type bumpers and things of that nature. And so once I really got into the trenches and just exploring that and becoming really familiar with it, that's where I kind of pivoted into, okay, I like doing motion graphics more than VFX. So it was those type of projects that, really took to my liking there.
Yeah. So have you always been someone who just learns any tool? Have you always just sort of gone into, because I know you do 3D stuff as well. Mm-hmm. So like right from the start, did you think I want to be an After Effects guy, or did you just whatever you need to get the job done?
Yeah. So like, okay, so when I was in school, we were learning 3ds Max, Soft and Mush, which doesn't even exist anymore, in After Effects. And so like it was a combination of 3D and 2D compositing. Like back then, there really was no real integration between all the 3D apps and the 2D apps. And so it's kind of one of those things too that I like, because you're just kind of problem solving and making these programs work together. But what really got me into 3D was when I was actually interning, I had an opportunity to work on Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. And like I grew up like a big comic book geek. And at the time they were using Cinema 4D, which I never heard of before, but they asked me, they say like, hey, we would love to have you on this project. We're using Cinema 4D. Do you happen to know that program? And I immediately just said, of course, like who doesn't know Cinema 4D? Even though I'd never heard this thing before, it's like, I can't pass up an opportunity to work on a Marvel project. So I literally stayed at the studio till like 2 a.m. for like nights on end, just reading the actual physical manual and teaching myself Cinema 4D. And that's pretty much how I got to be, more into being a 3D artist, was that first experience there. Because once I learned Cinema 4D, I was just immediately hooked. Like it was so intuitive and easy to learn. It was just easy to really take off from there.
That's cool, man. I really like how you just jumped in there and just like took it and just said, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna own it, and it's like took that, believed in yourself, take that thing. It's like the willingness to learn and that wanting to learn and being that, we were talking about being a generalist, but it's more about actually just trying to give something a go. I know there's a lot of people where they're very kind of fixed in their roles. They're like, oh, I don't touch that program, and right. It's like, but I like that. And I'm very much in the same kit. And I remember one of my first jobs as a video editor, they were like, oh, we've got this file. It's you use Final Cut Pro. I'm like, yeah. Of course I use Final Cut Pro. Yeah. Never used it.
That's it in the bathroom, Googling YouTube videos.
Yeah, it was exactly. I know. Basically, the guy came, showed me the job. It was like 200 layers of complicated stuff. And he's just like, okay, I'll come back at lunchtime. I'm like, yeah, cool. And I was like, Google, how to use Final Cut Pro. But it's good. It throws you in the deep end. That's how you learn stuff. And you can then you get into something that you didn't even realize, like, but you loved it,
Yeah. I think that's absolutely what I look out for. Like when you're hiring someone or anything, is whether they can just pick stuff up.
Yeah, I always say that's the best way to learn. Like just get thrown into the fire, because once you figure out that problem, you'll never forget it, because you just remember being so anxious and, just being so much under stress. That's something that doesn't leave with you, rather than, like I've tried to learn Houdini before and I'm just watching random Houdini tutorials, but the knowledge is lost just because I feel like I haven't been thrown into that fire where I have to use Houdini to finish this project.
Yeah.
That's basically like how I've learned, like Redshift and Unreal Engine. Like I forced myself to take on projects that utilize those assets. And then from there, it's like, I know this program because, I know what it took to get to these end results there, or what I put myself through to get there.
That's interesting. That's also something to say for client work, and in terms of how client work can push you creatively as an artist, just to get better, because you won't necessarily try these things yourself. You might stay in your comfort zone, and then like people have these demands.
Right.
Often these fantastic ideas, and you're like, yeah, okay, I'll figure that out. But that's a very, very good point. That is how you learn. I think that's how it sinks in. It's like learning a language. You have to use it. You have to be. You can't 100%. Just listen to the tapes.
That's it. There's a massive difference between you can watch 100 tutorials and then you get one simple job, and it's you hit something that you haven't seen, and then you're straight into figuring it out anyway. Definitely.
I mean, having said that, how do you approach making your tutorials with that in mind, in terms of like how you've experienced some of the Houdini ones?
Yeah, so funny enough, it all comes from, well, at the beginning, they all came from client experiences, because before I even did YouTube, I used to screen record myself going through my process and stuff, just because like I used to take like, weeks to figure something out. And then, you're on to the next project. And then maybe like 6 months down the road, something that I figured out 6 months prior, comes up again. And I'm like, oh, I did that, no problem. But I totally have like a brain fart, because I forget like all the steps and all the research I took to get to that specific point. And so I started just like, if I knew something was going to take some effort to get done, I started to screen record myself. And then I just started building up like an archive of my own videos that I could go back and reference if they ever came up again. And then, just talking to friends and stuff, sometimes they would hit me up like, hey, do you know how to do such and such? And I'd be like, oh yeah, you know what? I have a video on that. And I would just, send them my video for them to go through. And somebody one day was kind of like, how come you don't put this stuff up on YouTube? And I'm like, I don't know. It's nothing that I really thought about before. And
good
so
question.
I just started throwing stuff up on YouTube. Like my really early YouTube stuff was like really rudimentary. Like I was using my cell phone to record myself with. I bought like a $20 mic at the store, and it was, it's some of the most basic stuff you've seen. But, as people started to reach out to me and say like, hey, this stuff is really helping me out, that kind of made me, invest in like a better camera, and then later on invest into like a better mic and really start taking it more serious. But a lot of those early tutorials were stuff that if I was working on a project, I'd be like, you know what, I bet you somebody else is having the same problem I am. And I would just, make it a tutorial and put it up on YouTube. And I just started getting the feedback, and even other people would say like, hey, that's cool, but have you tried doing it this way? And then that would be like, oh, you know what? That is a better way of doing it. So then I would do another tutorial shouting out that guy that gave me that tip. And it kind of just, formed an evolution of its own there.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you that, because for me, like I started to know you through YouTube, and it seems like over the last kind of 3 years, you absolutely blew up doing YouTube tutorials. And like, do you think that's are you doing that as well? Do you think it's good for your kind of brand and for, getting more work and things like that as well? Is it something you'd recommend to people to do?
Yeah, no, 100%. So as in terms of work, it didn't really bring any like new clients my way, but what it did was it brought different brands my way. And so I started getting hit up by brands like, hey, would you mind using our hardware, or would you mind using our microphone? Or even that's how I got hooked up with Epic Games. Like once I started doing like the mashup tutorials with Cinema 4D and how to integrate that into Unreal, some of the guys internally over there started watching them, and then they reached out to me and said like, hey, we should work together because we're really interested in, grabbing more C4D artists and, introducing them to the Unreal space that we have here and stuff like that. So I would say just in terms of visibility, it's helped out a lot. And then, like people like yourself that, like I've been doing motion graphics since 2006, but it's only been like the past 3 or 4 years that people have started to really recognize who I was. So it's definitely good for, getting your brand out there. And, as artists, we are our own brand. So this is something that helps you get more visibility, and you never know what could come your way, if the right person sees it.
Yeah. Because we're both, Mickey's freelance and I'm kind of working in the industry all the time. And like the YouTube is something that I definitely want to look into.
Yeah.
Because, we've talked about this on our podcast before, but there's kind of been a lot of fatigue with, there was a point in time where, you're just seeing fantastic work on Instagram every day. And what it kind of can do is like open up. So you feel like you're competing with the whole world. Do you know what I mean? You feel like you're competing with like the best of the whole world, and there's kind of no way to get seen unless you're kind of able to top that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm really interested in. I think you've got to build a brand definitely in order to. You've got to give people something as well as just putting your work up for them to look at.
Yeah, and I've heard the same with podcasts as well. Like you guys are podcasting. I've heard stories of podcasts, helping elevate different artists as well. Like I know Ash Thorpe has his own podcast, and the guests that he brings on, he might actually start working with later on. So, and then same with my friend Don Allen. Like he's had guests from like Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, and then they get to know him better through the podcast, and then they hire on to do, like AR work and stuff. So it's definitely a good way to network as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason for starting the podcast, is just to kind of find that community and be able to talk to people who do similar stuff, interested in similar things, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, to like learn off each other, to be sharing. I think this is what actually does reward people like you, when people do share things on information, knowledge, and sharing like that. It's a time where all those things are getting highly rewarded, and I think that what you said, Will, you've got to put something in. Whereas on places like Instagram, if you are just like out there, it's like a rat race. It's raw, it's like it's just flooded with stuff. I mean, I'm actually a little bit out of that. I still haven't. I'm in the middle of an Instagram scandal at the moment. I'm just going to say this. I still haven't got my account's been disabled because apparently I'm imitating myself. Like,
oh, really?
I have still got no more response other than that. Basically,
that's crazy.
I know, right? So basically. I'm going to pivot to YouTube as well. That's the take.
I say YouTube and Twitter seems to have like a revival too, especially with the NFT stuff. It seems like a lot of people have been gravitating towards Twitter a lot lately. Like I barely go on Instagram anymore. Like I'm basically just on YouTube and Twitter these days, social media wise.
Yeah, so I guess we'll get into that, but we'll definitely get into the NFTs in a bit. I wanted to ask you a bit about real-time, because you're kind of famous for doing real-time motion graphics stuff in Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
And I want to know, not only kind of why the real-time appeals to you, but also like where you see that going. I know there's a lot of new innovations coming out as of yesterday. I wonder if you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So I would say, again, going back to my background, just as being like a video game advocate, like once I, doing the tutorials, merging cinema and Unreal together, once I was able to explore that, I'm like I felt right at home with Unreal because, the navigational tools are basically like running a first person shooter. So you're using the keyboard and mouse, you're flying around your scenes as if you're playing like Call of Duty or Wolfenstein or something crazy. And I just naturally felt at home there. And then on top of that, like before that, I used to be a Redshift and Octane user, in which they're notorious for having slower render times unless you're pumping more GPUs at them. And so I had like several machines here at my home office, and, I had several like 2080 Ti's and 1080 Ti's, and my electric bill was just astronomical. Like every month, just because of rendering, my electric, like they would send me the bill and it would have a graph on it. And it's like, here's how much electricity your neighbors are using. And then it would show my graph. It'd be like way up here. And it's like, here's how much you're using. Like, what exactly are you doing? And
are you mining Bitcoin, sir? What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny. Every time I go to the the computer store to get more GPUs. People are like, "Oh, you're a Bitcoin miner." And I'm like, "No, I'm doing motion graphics, like nothing of the sort." But it was just my electric bill is just through the roof. And so once I discovered that Unreal was doing real time rendering at like, comparable quality, like with ray tracing and everything, with only using one GPU, I was just floored. And so like once I got more comfortable using Unreal Engine, I went to eBay and I sold all my GPUs. So I made a lot of money, and my electric bill came way down. So that was like my biggest incentive, is like I'm saving money while rendering, and I'm not having to wait overnight, because a lot of times those overnight renders, you kind of can't sleep because you never know if it's going to crash or if you're going to get like weird frames in there, and you wake up and you have to like kind of bandage your render because something might have messed up, and you're like, well, I don't have another 15 hours to render this. Let me see how I can patch it. And so that right there was like the biggest, step for me getting into real-time rendering, and just being able to render faster, save a lot of money. And then also, if clients have like, notes and stuff like that, I don't tell them that I'm using Unreal yet, because I don't want them knowing that, I can make these changes on the fly. But it's not taking me 2 days to make these changes. I might make the change and then deliver it the next day. And they're like, "Oh, wow, that was fast." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm getting better."
That's genius. I never thought about that part of it. Yeah.
You know what? I never thought about it. You just made me think, like, does Unreal, they could push the more environmentally friendly version of rendering aspect of their thing, that we are a greener way than using a standard GPU rendering.
I did get into a couple of Twitter scuffles when, the environmental stuff was coming out a few months ago with NFTs. And I'm just like, well, if you guys were using Unreal Engine, you use less electricity on your renders. And so,
man, I'm really excited about it. I love that stuff. Interactive. See, I've been thinking about when NFT, Will introduced me to NFTs. And when one of the things I got excited about when I just first opened my mind up to the ideas was, okay, I saw JPEGs and I saw animations and MP3, and I heard, okay, cool, people are making music tracks and it's going this way. But what I was thinking was like, ooh, interactive NFTs, all right, interactive digital art being more mainstream on a platform where you could just like imagine like on a scroll, like you were scrolling Instagram or whatever, or any of these kind of like place where you just got a load of pictures, but each one of those you could move the camera through. You could change where you're looking at it from. You could like spin the object or anything like that. And then when I came across your Mixmaster mic, VR experience, and it's exactly the kind of thing I was thinking. Like, what my question is, like, what do you think? Like in this kind of world, like the kind of like the potential or exciting innovations of things like that to do with like interactive digital content, interactive NFTs.
Yeah, 100%. Because like you were saying, I think like just the JPEG and the video files, like there's some really great art out there, but there's so much it's getting oversaturated. So it's almost like, what can you do to push yourself, outside of that crowd there? And I've been seeing people do innovative stuff. Like there's like a holographic box called I think it's called the Glass Box or Looking Glass. And basically you could take like your 3D objects, bring them into a hologram, and it has like a little, I think a Raspberry Pi or some type of computer in it. And so you could totally make it interactive. Like you could even hook up like a keyboard and mouse to it or an Xbox controller. And then like your experience, like whoever buys it can actually interact with this box of a hologram sitting on their desk or their table or whatever, which kind of takes the NFT to that next step. Like you buy the NFT and then you get this physical hologram object that you can interact with. And I'm seeing cool stuff like that happening right now, which I'm really interested in. Like I've reached out to them and hopefully I can start getting into that as well. But definitely interactive NFTs, I think, will be the next wave, especially if, VR starts to come down more in price and be a little bit more accessible. Like the Oculus Quest is already kind of cheap, but I can see people buying like virtual NFTs for almost like a Second Life type thing, but in virtual reality. So it's kind of like you have your own VR apartment. It's you want to space it out with some furniture or, some type of, sculptures or anything of that nature. So I could see that being like the next evolution of this whole blockchain thing.
I can see a lot of things. I absolutely agree. I can see a lot of things what you just mentioned there with like, there's been a lot of talk about Apple finally coming out with some AR glasses.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we were talking, there's a lot of talk about physicals and then there's the virtual space, but then there's the mix, the augmented space in between where you can all have your Apple glasses and I can come into my house and you can see my NFTs 3D holograms spinning in front of you, you can have, you can have all sorts of things. You can have a hologram of a person fully just walking in and it's like some actor or some celebrity and it's like, I don't know, Will Smith NFT hologram. And he's like, hey, Mickey.
That's where it's going to get weird because what happens with these dead celebrities and it's like, okay, I own Marilyn Monroe's hologram. It's like, it's like I own her likeness as an NFT hologram and it's like, no one else can have Marilyn Monroe. She's all mine now. And like where does that type of stuff go to? So it's going to get interesting.
Link that with Unreal Engine, real-time capabilities, and you can have her moving and talking to you in real time, basically.
Exactly, yeah. Mix a little bit of AI in there, and you never know.
Because I think that's something I've said on the pod before as well. Is I think it's really interesting that with these kind of digital frames, right? There's a bit of a problem at the moment that you buy the NFT and it's like, what are you actually buying? Like you don't actually own the artwork, right? So I can see, like you're saying, when there's a time when we have either frames or you have a virtual world like Second Life, where kind of everything that you show in that environment is verified as being on the blockchain, and the only way to display that is by having a legitimate NFT that you've purchased. Then it kind of makes those NFTs more valuable because nobody can have it unless you have officially bought that on the blockchain. So this whole just right click save and you've got a copy thing is kind of will go out the window.
Right.
And I mean that's something I want is basically a frame with people's artwork on it now. So I'm looking out for that.
But especially in the virtual world, you can do that instantly. You could have a virtual landscape where it cannot be populated with anything other than everything's from the blockchain. It can only be populated by items from the blockchain. Therefore, it does get rid of that save thing. It's like what you can see in that realm is only that. And then it can almost be a bit more exclusive, perhaps, because that way you don't even, let's say if you wanted it like that, if you wanted these more exclusive art galleries in these places, like you would actually have to put on the VR headset, enter that room, and that's the only space where you can truly see these pieces as they are. You can see a picture of it, what someone else is seeing on the internet, but you can't actually see it, or get rid of that argument of like, I can just right click save as JPEG.
Right. And I can see the gaming space getting into this as well. We're already kind of being conditioned with it, like if you're playing Fortnite or Warcraft, how you get like special items and special skins, and some of them are, limited. Like, hey, you can only buy like this Wolverine skin for these 2 weeks, and after that, you can never buy it again. So everybody that has that Wolverine skin from, that time period will always have it forever. So that's kind of like NFTs in a nutshell. It's kind of like you're making it exclusive to these people, and only these people own this item for the rest of time, or at least that's how it's supposed to work. Like, they could always resell it again, but then that kind of, you kind of make the population mad that initially invested into that. So you're also taking that at stake as well too, with the NFT thing. Like when I make an NFT, I'm promising that I'm never going to resell this again. Cause like you're saying, you can always right click and save. And like, if I'm just like, okay, the Mixmaster Mike piece, I want to sell it again. And then the original owner is like, hey dude, what the heck? Like I bought this from you. How are you going to resell it again? So we're kind of taking each other's, word at it at this point. But once everything starts getting locked down virtually, like you said, like you have your virtual space and AR and VR, and whatever I possess, only I could put it into my physical space. I think that's where we're really going to start seeing like the property ownership of this stuff coming to rise.
Absolutely. I think it's for me more and more. I'm sure everyone has a similar thing when they first hear of NFTs. It's not like immediately like, whoa, that's like, it's probably like, what? And then slowly by slowly, like, what? But why? Hang on. And then once you get it and you're into it, the whole thing makes sense. And the whole thing makes sense more to me now than ever before in terms of just a progression. Even like just from a green environmental standpoint, for example, like there's a lot of talk about the gas prices and the gas emission and how much crunching it takes to like solve these equations at the moment. But surely that's going to get quicker. That's going to get more streamlined. Ethereum 2 is going to be 99.9% more efficient, all of these things. So they'll kind of go. But then where they can actually be more environmentally friendly is that we're not making prints. We're not printing on physical things. We're not sending out and shipping pieces across the world. They are instantly there to then own digital items. It's like it's there. It's in the ether. It's like, sure, it takes some kind of computing power and storage power, but as we get into more renewable sources, we're not producing things and shifting and moving them around anymore. And you can redecorate your house with a click of the button or just by saying the word green, and your wallpaper is green because you're wearing augmented reality glasses. It's like it makes sense. I can see more and more of it makes, just like currency, just like the digital currencies and where it all started from the crypto, the blockchains technology. It's like currency going digital. And it didn't start with blockchains. It started years before that with credit cards and bank accounts and everything like that. But it makes sense. It makes sense. So I think it's a great future for it. And I think this is just the beginning. I think there's so many fields where we can explore these things. NFT movies, NFT, an interactive NFT movie, I think would be cool. Yeah. Something like Bandersnatch, but real time, something that could use AI and actors and Unreal Engine would be awesome. Things like that. These are the ideas I'm having.
I mean, even just real contracts in general, like my wife was telling me a few weeks ago, someone actually sold their house on a blockchain, like their physical house. They sold it for $1 million on a blockchain. So the person, they bought the house, but the contract, was, it was exchanged as an NFT. So I guess they scanned the contract and they used whatever cryptocurrency they used to exchange that. But it's like that person's ownership is now a part of the blockchain. So even if they lose their paperwork, like the physical paperwork, it's like they still have some type of way of proving their ownership of this, this property that they bought.
Yeah, I've seen people talking about that might be a way to kind of speed up the whole process, because I know like here it takes like months and months. And if you have these kind of automated contracts, it gets rid of the need for estate agents and things like that to process your house.
You won't need lawyers and witnesses. Because the witnesses, it's on the blockchain. The whole world's the witness.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen people trying to do cars, like, nice cars with NFTs and jewelry and things like that. Because then you can kind of trade them without actually moving the original object and things like that.
A lot of talk about concert tickets. That's what makes a lot of sense. People selling concert tickets, because a lot of companies selling these big events, they'll sell them. All the people who buy them first the touts will then resell them at like 5-6 times the price. And
they were saying that with the NBA here with the Dallas Mavericks in particular. Mark Cuban said they were going to start selling the basketball game tickets on a blockchain as NFTs. And even have teams like the Golden State Warriors that just dropped the NFT where they gave you a championship ring if you were like the highest bidder of their championship NFT. So it's like you would get the team ring that they won during their NBA championship. So there's like extra incentives you could put on top of owning, like the sporting event ticket. Is like you could get like, extra incentives with it, physical incentives with it if you have that proof of ownership.
Do you feel like, it's good, like, do you feel, at the moment it started in this kind of underground term, but it's going to get more and more mainstream, and more big companies are going to do Instagram or even building their own NFT platform.
Right.
Do you feel like, I'm wondering, is this a good thing or a bad thing for like up and coming artists, unknown artists who want to make it in the game and want to get into the NFT world and maybe try and make some money and a living out of it? Is it a good thing that it's like massive companies are going to be all over it in the next year or so? Like Coca-Cola are going to be doing NFT cans or something. Or do you feel like it's basically, is it going to take it away from the grassroots, and it's just now going to be like the big players who are going to like utilize it.
That's the tough thing, right? Like it's kind of hard to predict. Like I know, like I'm in Southern California here in the States, and every year we have Comic-Con down in San Diego, which is grown to be massive. Like, you know, all the big corporations are there, Universal, Warner Brothers, Marvel, DC, etc. But that started as just a grassroots underground thing, you know, just a couple of guys that were really into comic books, just, you know, we're like, okay, once a year, we're going to all gather together here and, you know, just, you know, explore our love for comics. And, you know, as it grew more and more popular, the big corporations kind of came in and then they just overtook it to where it is today. And now, you know, the underground guys or the original guys, they have to start like their own offshoot Comic-Con thing to just take, you know, kind of take it back to its roots. So it seems like when big corporations, they see the money there, they kind of come in and they kind of ruin it for, you know, the people that were in it originally. So with this blockchain stuff, it's kind of hard to tell. Like, I know there was a couple of initial cash grabs, you know, like Taco Bell, the food company, like as soon as, you know, people started making millions of dollars on a blockchain, Taco Bell is like, hey, we're dropping the Taco Bell NFT on Rarible. And it was just like complete crap. And people are like, I'm not buying this. Like, what are you guys doing here? So, you know, it's like, it's going to take the people rejecting it for the corporations to either take it more serious or, you know, we could kind of guide it into the right place. But I would hate to see it to go way of like Comic-Con or Burning Man or anything else that, you know, that starts off grassroots that has good intentions and the corporations just swoop it and take, you know, everything away.
I mean, this is the bit that disturbs me the most. Is like when it started, there was all these artists, you know, small artists on Twitter saying, you know, it's really freed me up, and now I can basically just work on my NFTs and don't have to work for a corporation. And then we started to see that these kind of, I guess, like ad agencies or big companies were forming, basically hiring freelancers to make NFTs for them, and then selling the NFTs. And there was all that. There was like calls for people to kind of say, if this sells for £1 million, I get a certain percentage and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like something that came out of people wanting to, you know, help other artists and show their support for other artists. It then gets, eaten up by corporations. It's just, it
gets kind of tricky too, because if you are working for a corporation, now do you have to have in your contract, like, if you do sell this IP for, you know, as an NFT, I get a certain percentage out of it. Like, I know that was the thing going on at DC, because that original comic book illustrator guy that used to do Wonder Woman comics like 60 years ago, he started selling his stuff, you know, his original Wonder Woman prints as NFTs, and he made something like $3 million US. And, you know, DC came down and was like, hey, no one else can sell our superheroes unless you come through us. And then I started thinking, I'm like, you know, the people working on, you know, Superman and Batman right now, like what kind of protection do they have that DC's not going to now take their stuff and sell it as an NFT, and then all they're making is their day rate or their salary if they're on staff? You know, it's like they could sell a Batman NFT for $10 million, and then here I am. I'm like, hey, I was only working for, you know, such and such amount a day. It's like, I want some of that $10 million for my hard work, you know?
Yeah, I think it's all about, like, it has to be written into those contracts, even into the blockchain as part of the deal. And if it gets resold, like just like a resale, giving a cut to the artist, that can be as part of the contract of the NFT. I think that's where we need to maybe protect ourselves and think about this. Just one random thing I thought to say, like for comic books, I've actually thought NFTs is a great platform for graphic novels. You could do like you could do a first edition, a first print, your open edition, your first edition. And then just like people used to, you know, I still have some, and my brother's old ones, he's got like a Wonder Woman, like issue 4 from like 1977, something like that, right? And it's like, we have to keep that in a pristine, you know, condition. With these things, they won't degrade, but you will still have like maybe the first run, for example, when they're like the first run of the first, instead of the first print, it'll be the first mint.
Right. Which, as a old school, I guess I'll show my age, but as an old school collector, I still like the physical runs,
physical,
you know,
yeah.
like, you know, the NFTs and digital age, I guess, like, you know, the younger people are growing up in the digital age, but I grew up collecting, you know, like the Marvel cards, the Topps cards, I used to go to the comic book store and, you know, collect like the first editions whenever they come out with new heroes and stuff like that. Like I still have like all my comic books in the garage there in the plastic with the cardboard backing to keep them in as much
Nice.
pristine condition as possible. But it's like, I like that. Like I could show my kids like, hey, when I was your age, I would hang out at the comic book store until it opened up just so I could get this comic here. And it looks, you know, as good as the day that I bought it. And I don't know. I like physical items like that. So this is the blockchain stuff is kind of taking it away. Like if they start just doing digital comics and it's like, hey, you get the new Spider-Man, you know, 2030 only on the blockchain. And it's like, well, you know, it might look cool. And that might be something that I wanted like a physical edition of.
Yeah. So there's an argument not to make everything an NFT, basically.
Yeah.
Some things are good as they are, you know.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I mean, that's why I think that it works well with picture frames or like interactive things where you, like you were saying earlier, where you can plug in a controller and play with it.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, I've got my vinyl over here. I'm a big fan of the physical items as well.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about in terms of the NFTs. Like, do you see? I know you're doing a lot of them now. Do you see yourself kind of transitioning into that like full time? Or are you still always going to do kind of client work and things like that as well?
No, I would like to do a little bit of both because as we were speaking about before, like with client work, clients come up with wild stuff sometimes, like just stuff out of the blue. They're like, hey, can we do this, this, and this? And you're like, yeah, but let me figure it out. And so that's how you learn, you know, it's like you get these wild requests and you figure it out. And then at the end of the day, you know, you come up with something cool that you might not have come up with on your own. So even though you're doing it as work for hire, there's just still skills and assets that you can later apply to your own personal work. So I think it's probably good to have a good balance of, you know, NFT work and client work. Like I know I have a couple of friends that done pretty well in NFTs and, you know, they'll see on posts on Twitter, like I'm quitting my job and I'm doing NFTs full time. And I'm like, I don't, I don't know if I mean, I know they make good money, but I would have to be able to make good money for years on end before I would be comfortable to say no more client work. But even then I would still probably take some client work just because I need something always fresh and evolving. Like I can't, for me personally, just doing personal projects all the time, I know I'm not going to push myself to the extremes that I need to be pushed to sometimes. So I think it's healthy to have these extreme, crazy, you know, requests that clients come to you with.
I think I just need to get better clients, basically. Because they're not pushing me at the moment to do anything crazy or extreme. It's the same old. So this is where I'm like trying to level up at the moment, and and I think part of that is starting things like this, potentially YouTube channels, kind of getting out there, sharing work, getting and making a way. Is there any like advice I wanted to ask you? Like if you have like just, you know,
I need some as well, please.
I mean, it was a cool story. I enjoyed your story, like how you just went out there and it was, you know, you're sending out DVDs and like we're OG enough to know that actually, I was sending out DVDs as well. I was like, I even had them printed. You know, that was went to the printing company, got them done, sent them everywhere. I even drove to places, posted them through the door, so I knew they definitely had it. You know, in places in London and stuff. So I wanted to ask you, like in those days, like you're from Pittsburgh. Is it predominantly Los Angeles and California, or like where in England, for example, if you want a job in this kind of industry and you want to do motion graphics, where you come into London predominantly, right? Like what's it over there? So like you couldn't? Is there like nothing in Pittsburgh? Did you have to go to LA? Is that where it's all at?
Yeah, so when I originally started, this was way back, like I graduated in 2006, and at that time, like you could do motion graphics back in Pittsburgh, but it's considered a smaller city. Like a bigger city would have been Philadelphia, that's more internationally recognized, but even there, like for motion graphics, you're pretty much working on smaller agency stuff, like for local products and things of that nature, or you're working at the local news station. And so I knew that I wanted to work, you know, like in Hollywood type TV shows and movies and things of that nature. So to get that kind of work, you have to move to where the work was. And so at that time, it was predominantly in Los Angeles and New York. And so growing up on the east side of the United States, I used to frequent New York a lot. And like I said before, I'm extremely claustrophobic, and New York is a bunch of people just jam packed into one city, and you have all these tall skyscrapers, and you just feel like you're in a box. So I knew I didn't want to work in New York, and I'd never been to California before, but I just, on a whim, I'm like, that's where Hollywood's at. That's where all the cool work is that I want to get into. So that's why I choose, California as the place that I wanted to work at. But nowadays with the internet, like I work out of my home office, and I haven't been, like, I'm in Orange County now, and which is like maybe an hour below LA, but I haven't been up to LA in a good while, even before the pandemic, just because with the internet, it's like I'm just doing all my work at home, uploading it to the client FTP or wherever they have me uploaded to, and that's that. And so I know a lot of people have actually left California because the cost of living is high here, and they'll go back to, like middle America or wherever where you could get more affordable housing, and they're still working on, like TV shows and movies and things of that nature. So because of the internet speeds, everything has definitely spread out wider. Like you don't have to be in these certain hubs to get work. Like it helps because, sometimes if you get face-to-face contact, that goes a long way, but definitely you don't have to be in LA or New York now to get these type of projects, especially with the pandemic. It kind of opened up their eyes even more to, hey, we could work remotely with all this talent around the world that we were closing off because we were too stuck in our ways that you had to be here. It's like now they were forced to look out and see this whole spectrum of artists that are out there. And so now they're more open to working with, people across the world.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think it's been a blessing for kind of people like us that can be able to work remotely and do these things. Funny, I was watching an interview with Mike Winkelman, Beeple, talking about someone asking him if he, now that he's made all this money, would he move out to LA? And he's like, no fucking way, man. He's going to stay. He's going to stay in Wisconsin like for life. And I was like, and that's the thing. I could see there is that is an amazing thing. So people are at home. We can work from home. So you're saying basically you don't need to send your DVDs to LA anymore. Where would you, do you even look for work? Do people just come to you, or would you give people, like, do you actively seek anything out, like online? Do you approach people?
Like, because I'm kind of, I guess my situation is a little bit more unique because I did start so early off. And so like I did put in the work, in-house at all these different companies. And while you're there, you're networking with the producers, with the showrunners, with other artists. And then that's how we got freelance back in the day too. It's like, okay, I'm working at Universal. My freelance contract is up, but one of the artists I was working with there, maybe they go to like NBC or something, and then they need a position over there. So my friend at NBC be like, hey, I just started freelancing here. They need another artist. Do you want me to recommend you? And then that's how, you would get freelance work, just by recommendations of people that you just been working with. And I just kind of built up a network through, years of just working and interacting with people, to the point that some of the people that I used to work with are now, like heads of different production companies. And so, since I've already have that working rapport with them, they'll send me work, or they'll recommend other, networks and TV shows and stuff to me, like, hey, you should give Winbush a call there. I've worked with him. I know he's pretty solid. And so it's like, sometimes I'll look at the job boards, and if there's something that really interests me, maybe I'll, throw a pitch in there. But for the most part, it's been mostly just working off of my contacts that I've built over the past decade and a half.
Awesome. So would you say that it's beneficial in this kind of game to be freelance? Do you think to be able to make more contacts, to move around and to meet people like that?
Yeah, I've always found that when I was, because I've done both, I've done in-house and freelance. And when you're in-house, you're working with the same people over and over. And you're building a rapport with them, but these are typically people that they're not going to go off to other companies. Usually, once they get comfortable, they stay there. And every once in a while, they might bring freelancers in, if there was like a bigger project. So you are able to network with them. But I found that my name traveled a lot further when I was actually freelancing and only working for, like 3 weeks at a time at a certain studio. Like you get in there, you work the project, it's done, and then boom, you're on to the next one. And so my name was just really circulating just by, working the circles and getting out there. But they both have their highs and their lows. Like there's a sense of security when you're working in-house and you're going to get paid. Freelance, sometimes I didn't work for like a month or two. And so that's why you charge like higher rates, because, you might work on a project and then you might not find another freelance gig for like another month or two. And that could get kind of scary for some people too, especially if they're not good with money management, And so it takes a certain type of person to be able to withstand that and, know that something might come down the road, but you're just not sure when. Like nothing is for certain at all. And so if you can handle those type of gigs and stuff like that, then I say go for a freelance. But, it's not for everybody.
No, absolutely not. I think me and Will have been on kind of two opposite sides of the spectrum here.
Currently
at the moment, it's like, but it's like we've got our own. I think there's problems on both sides, and so we understand each other's things exactly like that. Like I've been on the freelance game, and Will's been working with the company for a while, and so he's gained a lot of experience in things and done some projects. Because he's been there for long, that given opportunities as a freelancer, I never got. Like I would be maybe sometimes just on the quicker job, whereas because he was there, he was known, he was trusted, and he would like do the things. So there's different takes on it, definitely.
Yeah, because I was freelance for kind of 5 years, and then it always felt like every time you finish a job, you'd have to kind of build up all that rapport again, and it's like all new people, and I was going to a different place every week at one point. I just wanted to find somewhere to kind of settle down and like feel like I was building something and build tools and kind of improve the place where I am. So there's like pros and cons to both. And as you say, like I did a lot of VR stuff, and because I was with the company, I was getting sent kind of around the world, like Dubai, China, like doing demos with this VR equipment. And that's maybe something that you wouldn't get to do if you were freelance in the same way.
I never got sent to China. Unless I paid my own way there. No, exactly. That's the kind of thing. You'll get those kind of like little perks and get to experiment with that kind of R&D side of things like that, if you've got something like that. Whereas if you're freelance, they're paying you top dollar for your time and your money. The project's set. You've got to just do the thing. You've got to deliver the job. I don't know. I've not had a job that I've had on freelance a luxurious amount of time. I won in my lifetime where I was hired for a month, basically just to make swirly shapes. It was great. It's just abstract. Just abstract patterns every day. I was like, I love this place. I'm like, you guys can keep me forever. Unfortunately, it had to end. I ran out of swirly shapes.
That's something I wanted to ask you about, because I know basically over here we hear that in America it's kind of hard to take holiday. Basically, you don't get a lot of holiday, and you get a lot of long hours and stuff like that. And I just I've got you on. I wanted to ask you if that's true and like how you found that. Is there a lot of kind of overtime and working overtime at studios?
Yeah, it's become a problem, especially in art industry. Like, there's been situations of people having heart attacks very young just because they're overly stressed, they're overworked. I don't want to get too grim, but there's been a couple of cases of suicide. People have just like worked to the brink of insanity, and there's been all types of like mental health issues. And that's something that I know, especially like right before the pandemic, like there seemed like to be a different case, like every week is someone just getting overworked, and it's gotten to the point to where they were trying to address, mental health. I would have to say that, I have to give a big shout out to Warner Brothers, because when I worked there, that was probably like the best working condition that I ever had. Like they took everybody's condition and health into consideration. So they actually had like, workout programs like for people to get like physically in shape, because, we're there at our desk all day. And so they were trying to take our physical health so that we didn't have like health problems. And then there were psychiatrists on the campus so that you could speak to somebody if you are feeling stressed out. And then the best thing was they stick to the 9 to 5 schedule. And so they wouldn't give you overtime unless you absolutely had to. But, you know, like as soon as that clock hit, they're like trying to rush you out the door. They're like, okay, your time's up. Like, we'll see you tomorrow. Like, they're pushing you out the door. So, you know, you're not, even if you wanted to keep working, they're like, no, we'll just pick up on it tomorrow. So Warner Brothers was ahead of the curve in that regard. But yeah, some of the smaller shops that I've worked at, we got overworked to the brink. And, you know, we did have, you know, artists from Asia and parts of Europe would come over and they were like, what in the heck are you guys doing? Like, what are these crazy work conditions? And yeah, it just, you start to realize that like we would hear people from like your side of the world say like, yeah, we get holidays. Like, you know, if somebody's pregnant, like the husband and the wife both get time off for that pregnancy and stuff like that, which that's unheard of here. Like you're still working like up to your pregnancy and the husband gets like no time off and stuff. Like it's crazy.
I mean, I get 2 weeks, and then my wife got months. But I know it's even better in other countries as well. But I mean, why do you think that is, particularly in America, it's gone that way with the culture?
Yeah, I'm not even sure because it seems like with America, there's just like a constant rush for no reason. Like it just feels like there's this constant rush to get to the finish line, but the finish line just keeps moving. So it's like you're always moving towards this goalpost that just keeps moving further and further back to the point to where it just becomes the norm. You know, it's like whenever I was working on movies and stuff, like a 12-hour day was not out of the realm. You know, it's like we have to get it done by this deadline and we do whatever it takes to get it done. But then every time that deadline comes up, it's like, yeah, we need a little bit more time. So they will push the deadline. So it's like, you're just always under crunch, and it's felt like it was for no reason. And I guess it's just a part of the culture, but hopefully, especially once we come out of the pandemic, things start to, you know, level out a little bit, and mental health is starting to become more of an issue over here. And so I'm hoping that we can, you know, take a lot of what you guys are doing as examples, that we don't have to work ourselves to death.
Yeah. I mean, I'm finding it a lot here at the moment because I think I work in like advertising, and it seems to be like a constant pitch cycle right now. So it's like, it's generally considered you don't work that late, but then it seems like every week is, you know, the most important pitch, the next most important pitch. And, you know, it's starting to happen where people are doing like whole weekends, and then they're kind of, you know, on a Monday morning, it's almost like your Medal of Honor where you're like, oh, so-and-so worked all weekend. Like, you know, I've never liked it. I mean, I think, especially because I used to do like programming and stuff like that as well. And I think if you've done an all-nighter and you come in the next day and you're trying to like code something, it's no go. Do you know what I mean? You can't even think properly. It just seems like a false economy. Like you burn out, and I see people burning out like left, right, and center already. And
I don't want to put any studios names out there, but I've seen studios where they actually had, you know, almost like bunkers where artists could go and take naps because, you know, artists would be burning out, and it's like, well, you can't go home, so just go take a power nap and get right back to it. And it's totally unhealthy, because then you start making mistakes, and then you have to go back and fix those mistakes, and it's just taking you longer. As if you would have just got home, got proper rest, and came back the next day, you wouldn't have made those mistakes, and it would have went a lot smoother. So the crunch thing it's like totally contradicting itself.
It completely contradicts. I find it so actually unhelpful to the end product. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't get it done any faster. Nothing actually is actually better about it. It's actually a bit of a myth, I think, a fallacy, where it feels like you're doing stuff because everyone's so stressed. And when you're under the stress, that it's like, things are moving. You know, it's like, but actually the quality of it isn't necessarily. It's not going to you're going to get people burnt out. You're going to get people tired. You're going to get people sick of it. Like, how do you think that, I don't know. I mean, this is just like an open question, I guess. I'm just wondering about like, how do we get ourselves out of this? And it's like, do you see, I feel like I'm seeing more people becoming independent freelancers, starting their own channel, starting to run their own business, starting to do this, and basically say no to working for a big company and a big boss for their whole lives. Is that the same in the States? I think it
Yeah,
is.
it's a lot more people starting their own business and just working remote, even if you're just a one person business like myself. And
Yeah.
that way, at least you're working out of, out of your home, you're more comfortable. And I know what it takes for me to get jobs done. So I know when I can take breaks. And as long as I have a deadline, I know what the end goal is that I can reach it. But it can't work that way for everybody. That's where, the yin and the yang comes in, because some jobs you do have to do in house and you have to do with a team of people. Like there's no way around some jobs, especially, as creatives. Like if you're working on a project where you might need somebody that's a dedicated lighter, a dedicated modeler, a dedicated texture artist, like there's no way sometimes that you want these people spread out all over the place. Like they would get done faster if they're, all in the same room and just kind of working with each other. And so there is a bounce to some of this stuff. Like some projects, yeah, we can work remote, but then some projects we might need to be all together. So I think for the places where you do need to work in house, they just got to, get better project management. Like that's what it comes down to. Like if you get people at the top that are good at allocating all the work to the people down below them, then you don't have to worry about overtime and stressing people out, because, the people that are good at project management, they can bounce these things out. But I've noticed working at different places, if you have bad people at the top that don't know how to allocate the work, that's where you get just like this crazy free for all and people just working all types of crazy hours, because it's just a lot of times there's no direction for the artist. So a lot of times we're sitting there twiddling our thumbs, like, what are we supposed to be doing next? Instead of saying like, hey, Jonathan, you know what? I see you over there. You're not doing anything right now. Why don't we jump on this over here to, streamline this and get this out? And so if you have a lot more of that, then I think we're better off overall.
Well, I think you don't have enough project managers with the knowledge. It's like it's only the people kind of doing the work who have the knowledge of how the process works, and so you almost need project managers with a bit more knowledge about that.
So I
Right.
find it interesting. Like, why is it set up like that in a way? Because there is a different skill, like different skills that we need. Like, we need someone who's going to be just good at the art, but we also need someone who's going to be good at talking to the clients, and someone who's going to be good, like with the numbers, and the person who's going to be good at kicking everyone in the ass and making sure it's all kind of delivered on time. Right? That's all fine, but I do find it odd sometimes working in several places in things like how compartmentalized the knowledge is. And
Yeah.
how not open enough it is, and how actually, well, maybe I need to learn a bit more about project management, and this person needs to learn a little bit more about motion graphics, so that we can then be on the same level and expect the same things. Because this, I think, when it comes down to it, it's a level of expectation. When it's not understood, it can't. The communication breaks down.
Right. So, like you were saying, you almost need people that were almost thrown into the trenches at one point. They were motion graphics artists, and now they move up into production roles. Because I've worked at places where, I've had like a producer come to me and say like, "Hey, the client is requesting a QuickTime in such and such Kodak. What is that?" I'm just like, "Are you serious?" It's like you don't even know what you're asking for, and they're like asking me to like get them up to speed on stuff so they don't sound like a buffoon whenever they go back to talk to the client, and they kind of know, act like they know what they're talking about. And it's just like a lot of times it comes down to politics too. Like these people are getting these positions because they knew the right person. They went to college with, somebody that got them a position, but they have no type of business being in this facility at all. I mean, that's where a lot of these VFX houses like Rhythm of Hughes and, a lot of them just shuttered, even though like, all the big studios were pumping millions to keep them open. They had bad upper management, and it got so bad to the point to where they started looking at different roles. Like, what does this person do again? And why is this person here? And we're spending millions on these roles and these people that are contributing nothing, but it's almost too late, and they just had to close the doors. And so, yeah, I feel like if you just got better people for those roles, I know as artists, we're kind of inverted sometimes, but if you can find, those jewels that, they can do the art and they could talk to people so they have the knowledge, that they could better facilitate working with artists underneath them and stuff. I think that's where you're really going to shine. I know, like I watch a lot of MMA, and you always see with the refs and stuff, the MMA fighters, they'll be like, that ref has no idea what kind of choke I'm doing or what's going on. Like I held on to this person for way too long because the ref wasn't knowledgeable about this certain type of choke, and I could really injure this person. Like the ref should have stepped in and stopped the match. And so they started making the refs take, like jujitsu and Muay Thai. So they became better familiar with the different things that the fighters were going through so that they could realize what's going on and hop on it before somebody got injured too much. So it's kind of like we almost need that for the creative industry.
Absolutely. I could see that could be a positive thing, but they're going to see some like that thing where where you were using Unreal Engine to do the render, but the client didn't know that, and if you had a project manager who understood how quickly you could do it, you can,
right.
They'll be like, hey man, I know you could do it in 5 minutes. Don't say it's going to take you a day, Winbush. That's the flip side.
The gift and the curse, right?
If we want to talk about funny client things, let me just mention one. I love this one. I had this recently. I got sent an MP4 with the client asking me if I could re-edit the video with like extending the footage and changing bits. And it was an MP4 that they sent me. It was like a finished video. And I said, yeah, sure. Send me the edit file. And they're like, what do you mean? This is it. I went, I need the project that this was edited in. It's like, no, this is all we have. And I'm like, oh, I can't.
Yeah,
I can't go into that.
I think that's just like, unfortunately, the natural way of the world. It's like the more into the kind of, the more geeky you are, the more into the kind of technology, the less you want to be involved with the client stuff and the managing, and you just want to sit and get on with your work, and that's like just the unfortunate way of the world. So I think
that's what I mean. I don't know if we would have that ideal, like you were talking about, Jonathan, where you need someone who had that previous experience. Like I just think, would I want to even be in that role? I'd rather be in the front lines on the ground. I'm like, give me the mouse, let me do it.
Well, sometimes money talks. Sometimes if
you
financial incentives for you're like, hey, we'll give you such and such, a year salary. It's like, oh, okay, that's speaking a different language. So you have to make your financial incentives there to make people want to move out into those positions.
That's it. I've just thrown my tablet pen out the window already. Gone.
Just want to ask you about Winbush Immersive and kind of what you've got plans, what you're doing with that.
Yeah.
And also whether it's just you or whether some of the things that we're talking about come into play with that. Do you hire other people and stuff as well?
Yeah, so majority it's just me. Like from time to time, I'll hire a freelancer. Like 3D modeling isn't my strongest suit, so I do have like some 3D modelers that I'll hire if there's something specific that I need. But for the most part, it's mostly me doing all the work here. And so yeah, I'm working on a few television shows here. One that I'm actually wrapping up on today, another season of Alaskan Bush People. If anybody has Discovery networks out there, it comes out on Discovery Channel. And then I'm trying to think what else I'm working on. Not anything that I could say besides, doing more NFT stuff on the side there. And so, yeah, for the most part, I guess just watch out for me on Twitter and see whenever I post new stuff as the NDAs come off that, I can start speaking about these projects that I'm on.
Are you getting back on tutorials? I know you said you've been off the tutorials for a little bit, but are you planning to get on the Unreal 5 stuff?
Yeah, most definitely. I've already had a couple of people reach out and leave comments on YouTube like, hey, where's the Unreal 5 videos? And I'm like, they're coming. It's like, I didn't want to be that guy that would just hurry up and throw, like the demo version of Unreal on, like the scene that they already created and just say like, hey, here's me flying around in Unreal. This is cool. Like I wanted to have a little bit more substance than that. And so I wanted to really familiarize myself with Unreal Engine, see what they're still working on because this is beta. And so all the features that we're used to having currently aren't implemented yet. And so like I'm finding some of the stuff just playing around with it last night. Like I tried to recreate the Grand Canyon, like down in the valley where you have the river and stuff like that because of all the Megascan stuff that is now integrated into it. It's supposed to be like more just drag and drop. And so like building the canyon and stuff was easy, like literally downloading the assets, drag and dropping and, playing with Legos at that point. But as soon as I added a river to it, the thing just freaked out. So I'm starting to see some of the limitations there. And then that's like, I'm starting to notice now, like, okay, so in the official demos from Epic, this is why we're not seeing them show off the water functions and even foliage. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed, like all the environments that they've been showing has pretty much been like rock formation. There's no trees, there's no grass, there's very little foliage, and that's because with the nanite system, it's not fully functional with it yet that I'm finding. And so it's just these small nuances that if I didn't take my time to just dive in there and kind of play around with it, I would have never known. So yeah, I could have put out an Unreal video the day that it dropped and just say like, hey, what up, Winbush here? I'm in Unreal, and look at me doing nothing for 10 minutes, It's like, I didn't want to do that because I'm seeing a lot of that. And so now I feel like I've been kind of put into the trenches to where I can make a video with a little bit more value, and people, hopefully they take something away from it. And I could kind of, set that expectations too of what to expect once, you finally download Unreal 5 and jump into the beta for yourself.
Yeah, so this nanite technology, like, is it not even polygons? Like, it's crazy. I don't really understand how that works, but yeah, you seem to be able to have billions of polygons, essentially.
It's something I'm still trying to figure out myself, and talking to other people. It's still kind of this unknown technology that's been kind of thrown at us. Like, the simplest
seems like voxel.
Yeah, I'm still confused on it myself, to be honest. Like, the best way that it was described to me was, so like, okay, Spider-Man, for example, they have Spider-Man in the movie and they have Spider-Man in the game. And so for the movie assets, those are built, let's say, using like ZBrush or photogrammetry, where you're going to have like billions and billions of polygons to make it look photoreal. And so if you wanted to make the Spider-Man game, you couldn't use those movie assets because there's just way too many polygons, and, you would have to decimate it down. And so now with Unreal 5 and this nanite technology, like, you could literally take like this high-res Spider-Man model from the movie and implement it right into your game with no decimation at all. And you don't have to like fake any type of details, like with like normal maps and bump maps and displacement maps. Like, the high-res polygon model that you make, it can handle that. And so I'm not sure what kind of crazy black magic they're using to, make this happen in real time. I'm still trying to figure out what this nanite stuff is myself. But for the most part, like, from what I've been seeing, at least with the Megascan stuff, like, it works. Like, before in Unreal 4, if I tried to take the high polygon, like the raw photogrammetry asset, let's say if they had like a cliff or something, if I brought that into Unreal 4, that thing would just chug. So I have to take, like it's called LODs, which is like a more decimated, lower polygon version of it. Bring that into Unreal, and then you bring the detail back by, like your normal maps and your displacement maps and things of that nature. But with nanite, it's like you don't need none of that. It's like your raw file, you could just kind of bring it in and just go to town.
Yeah, I think amazing. Like, for me, where Unreal was getting really exciting in terms of like some of the stuff you're doing with like real time and kind of more standard motion graphic stuff, and like this new technology is incredible. Like nanite, it looks absolutely incredible. It makes me want to just create a massive landscape scene. But for me, it's like, I'm really interested in how that.
Rocks only so far.
Rocks, only rocks. Yeah. Well, that's kind of where I'm getting to. It's like how for me, like, if I was doing some kind of product renders or whatever, like, I have actually seen where people basically take products and stick them in like Grand Canyon, because that's what you can do with Unreal. But I mean, right. I'm kind of excited about the day when it sort of becomes a bit of a replacement for, well, not a replacement, but you work with cinema and you can do all kinds of stuff.
I think the integration will get better there. Like, if you like cinema, we do a lot of like crazy particle stuff and the MoGraph cloner stuff and the fractures and things of that nature, which you can, like, that's what my channel is kind of built around. Yeah, it's like taking the crazy stuff we do in cinema and then converting that over to Unreal, which in Unreal 5, like, that stuff isn't in there yet. Like, there's no Datasmith plugin or anything that I saw. But that's what I'm waiting for, the data that I can really show off, like the motion graphics capabilities of Unreal, because that's something that they've actually been at least expressing to me that they want to be a big part of. And so that's why they started doing, like the Cinema 4D integration to begin with, because they want to get, like the broadcast television and the VFX and the motion graphics. Like, they don't want Unreal just for games. They want to be able to take over like all the different industries that, can take advantage of this technology. So I think,
Yeah, because I mean they're all going to start merging into one. I mean, when you've got like Redshift real time around the corner, it seems like they're all. I mean, it's not that long before they all are basically going to become real time. So then it basically comes down to the UI and the workflow tools and stuff.
yeah, I think where Unreal has the advantage is the different products that you can make out of it. So say you're working with an IP, it's like all the different assets you could have come out of Unreal. And by assets, I mean, so I'll bring Spider-Man back in, for example. Say we're working on, like a main title for Spider-Man. We could then take that, make it into a VR experience because all the assets are already there. And then you can also make it into an AR experience because everything's there. It's not like you're converting between all these different programs. It's kind of like Unreal's the hub. And then wherever you want to send it off to, you have all these different, functionalities. Like you could turn it into a game, the different interactive experiences, or you could just render it as, a cinematic experience as, a MPEG, or if you need to make key art, you could export it out just like as a JPEG. So it's kind of like Unreal is like your hub, and then you just, expand it out to whatever end product you need to send it out to.
I think that's interesting. I think that's definitely the way forward. I remember when me and Will first got into motion graphics and doing stuff like that, the generation before us were the designers, the graphic designers that had come from print, and they'd gone from print to digital to then it went from something that was stamped on a bit of paper to now it's like on a screen. And then that's not enough. We wanted it to move and to say different things and to animate. And so it's like, okay, so now we've got motion design. And then like the next obvious step from that is to not have a finalized video motion design, but actually a real-time generative thing. And this is where I can see loads of scary things as well, like a load of things like, for example, to do with advertising, like real personalized targeted ads where you'll have your dream, let's say, I don't know, you're into this kind of thing, you like eating this type of food, or you like this woman or something like that, or if you like this guy, or whatever you find attractive, they will generate that for you, and that person is going to deliver the advert to you. And we can be sitting at the same bus stop, and with our augmented reality glasses and with things like Unreal Engine and the utility of real time, is that I can look over and I can see one ad, basically that's for me, and it's basically tailored and designed in a way that will be, and maybe we're using algorithms or AI at this point, but it will be moving and it will basically be bespoke to every person who's looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get that now. Like, well, at least I know here in the States, depending on what area of the state you are and the demographic that is majority in that area, you might have a different type of advertising. Like you go to the grocery store, if you're in a predominantly Mexican area, all the advertisements you're going to see, Mexican people on all the ads and the billboards and everything in that area. But if you go to another part of the United States that's predominantly white, you're not going to see any Hispanic people on those ads. And so we're already kind of in that already. And so this is just being able to do that at a faster pace. Like
that's what I mean.
You said, real time. Yeah.
It's like if that in real time, if that Hispanic person goes to that other white area where they don't have Hispanic people, but he just goes there for a visit, that ad's going to appear there just for him, on that visit. That's what I mean. Real time, like just like that, like almost that scary level of like following you around. But,
I think what scares me about it is when the algorithm gets so good that basically every single product you see online, you're like, oh damn, I need that. I need that right now. Like it's not that long before they're like making custom T-shirts for you based on your previous history. And you're like, oh damn, that looks amazing.
But it does get kind of scary sometimes if I go to type something into Google and it finishes it for me. Yeah. So it's like I'm going to Google something and it's like it just already puts like the rest of the sentence together. I'm like, how the heck did it know what I was going to say? It's like crazy.
I know, right? I've done that as well. I'm like, I need to figure this out, and I'm like, how do I? And it's like, da 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 da, and I'm like, get out of my head, get out of my head. Stop listening.
I was saying to Mickey before on the podcast, I've got like 4 of those Google Home things in my house. Like any time in my house, I'm being recorded all the time. And like any time I say, oh, I really want to buy this, it's like, I go on the internet and there's just ads for that all the time. Like,
that's
we're like there. It's like it's happened.
Well, that brings me on just to one final, well, maybe not final, but I just want to bring this point in. It's like, are we actually going to become redundant, right? Eventually in this stuff, if the algorithm does and the AI gets so good, and then we've got tools like Unreal that are then given to not artists, but marketing executives who get their hands on it directly. And they basically, in a simplified UI, they basically say, who's your target market? Well, they don't even have to put that. The target markets, they just feed it a bunch of data and then spews out the completely relevant advert, designed in a way, made all motion graphics, like it knows what words it needs to say, it knows what it needs to do. It'll use a bunch of assets and models from libraries. It'll create characters, use voices based on things that you watch and things that you like in order to make you a thing. What I'm saying is, are we going to be out of a job soon?
Well, there's going to, well, if you're a programmer, maybe not, because there's going to be people that need to program the AI still, but...
Well, it's not that long before the AI will code itself. I mean, that's something I've got down on my this questions. Is like when AI gets kind of so good that it's basically generating art, because it's starting to happen now with NFTs. I've seen NFTs that have been made by AI and things like that.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
There is like a code to the universe and a code to beauty, and there's the golden ratio and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And if all of that is eventually fed into AI, like basically we won't be able to compete with that. I know there's other programs, things talked about that, but like how can you compete with like an AI that just knows what is beauty?
They've done it with music already. They've had an AI construct classical music based on Bach and Tchaikovsky and all of these like composers, and they played it to a bunch of classical music fans and some unknown pieces by some famous composers, very little known, and this piece by an AI. And which one moved you the most? And it was like 7 out of 10 people would say it was the computer generated one, was the one that could not have been written by a computer because it was so moving, it spoke to them so personally. And it was scary how many people not only said that, they didn't just say it was their favorite, but they were so certain that it couldn't have been because it was so soulful. Right. And then that was the one that was written by the machine.
Yeah, well, I guess that takes out my argument that you still need the human element in there. They give it that personality and soul. Yeah,
we're back to the Matrix, where all of this started, where Jonathan's inspiration for motion graphics even began. The people making the Matrix.
It could be too. It might get. I mean, it would take a while for it to evolve there, but it could get to the point to where, like, human art is so rare that we become, like a high rarity that collectors want to collect. Because, like, I don't want AI art. I want something created by a human, which is hard to come by. And so, like, human artists become, like these top pedestal, hard to get creations. Like it probably would take like generations for something like that to happen, but I mean, maybe that's where it could go to.
It's gonna be someone doing like finger painting, isn't it? It's like
yeah, exactly.
It's gonna be
everything
revolutionary.
Goes in cycles.
It's gonna be revolutionary.
I mean, like we've kind of jumped to the end, but what I wanted to sort of start this point is that I'm more of a technical kind of guy, right? And I know you're into the tech and stuff as well. And it's like with the tools that are coming out now with Unreal and all that stuff, it's like being that kind of technician is almost becoming less valuable because the tools are getting so much easier to use.
Right.
That it's becoming, I feel like I need to brush up my creative, I need to get on my design, like the fundamentals, because even for me, like being a technician, it doesn't cut it anymore because anyone can there's so many programs people can just crack open and like produce something like straight away.
I mean, even for creatives, it's getting tough. I mean, I remember when I was first starting off, getting like a photoreal image was like the pinnacle, like what every artist was, striving for. Like, we couldn't get photoreal for anything, no matter how expensive the machine was or how good of an artist. It was like very rare that someone made something photoreal. And it's like nowadays, people are throwing up photoreal images on Instagram like it's nothing. Like, hey, look what I worked on for 2 hours. And you're just like, oh man, it's like, I remember when something like that was like unheard of and you needed a whole team to construct that. And I was like one kid in his attic at his house or something. It's just like,
I mean, I'm finding that enough with, I'm finding that with Mickey, right? Because I was doing 3D for like 15 years. And like Mickey only started learning it, like a few months ago. And he's like cracks open Blender and he's using Eevee and he's making stuff that's better than pretty much anything I've ever done.
Oh, shut up. It's not better.
No, but you know what I mean? It's like, because I'm not just saying it's the tools, but because he's now got these tools where you can just get going, and then it becomes about your creativity rather than the tech.
Yeah, I could confidently say that like one of the top 3 NFT artists right now, like on a scale of just monetary numbers, he only started 3D maybe like a year or 2 ago.
Yeah,
which is crazy. Like, I mean, he did have like I guess he came from a key art background, so he did have like some sense of design, but he literally just like I know it because like he reached out to me watching my tutorials and stuff, and just seeing him going from my tutorials to now making millions of dollars in NFTs. I'm just like, geez, dude, you've been doing this for like 2 years. And it's like, I mean, it's crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, it is getting like that now. Like in our day when we had to learn things, there was no YouTube. It was creativecow.net, which was like, this is where I found all my, I read your interview on there as well. And this is where I started. There was essentially, it was creativecow.net. And for me, it was Andrew Kramer, videocopilot.net. Andrew Kramer, legend, OG. And so he got that kind of stuff is when I was kind of like learning into things. But now, like I learned Blender, like Will said, like, and I just picked it up, but there's so many resources. That program's been around now for so long, and it's been updated to, every month there seems to be like a new update. There's like constant support for it. There's always things, and there's like a million things. I just like Blender this, like bang, there you go, it's done. And it seems to me it has made things much more user-friendly in a way where I remember using things like before even Cinema 4D, before 3D Studio Max, is it Lightroom or Lightwave, yep. And things like that. That looked like a NASA space station computer deck to me. You know what I mean? I was just like, I think it's great. Personally, I love that it's moved to here because it's more of a direct line to creativity, rather than the hurdles of technical problem solving. There's more time for just experimenting, I think, now.
Yeah.
And I think
100%.
something like Unreal Engine, when you're getting those results in real time, surely something like that's even better, even more. It gives you more feedback more quickly than having to wait 12 hours for a render and be like, that looks kind of shit,
Yeah. I always say, like, the more time you have to be creative, the better. Like, instead of trying to, fudge around with all the settings to make your render times faster, it's like now, you have more time to be creative because you're getting the results instantly, which gives you better results creatively, because that what I see is what I get, and I don't have to mess around with these samplings and these light settings and all this stuff just to try to get my render speeds down. There's like no compromise now. It's like I could just be free to just go out there and create, which is crazy. But it's funny you bring up Andrew, because I remember early in the days when he first started Video Copilot, how he did get a lot of backlash back then, because like your skill set was your trade. And so a lot of artists, they weren't really keen to sharing like all their secrets, because that's why you would get hired, at a certain spot, because you are known for a certain thing. So once Andrew is out there putting his secrets out there, people are like, what's this guy doing? He's sharing all the, all the tips and tricks and secrets, and now anybody could do it. And yeah, there's a lot of kickback at first, but then it quickly grew on people once those people were seeking out Video Copilot for stuff they were getting stuck on. So it's like,
I think it's a time now where it's moved on, man, where people are getting rewarded for that, and like yourself and like Andrew Kramer and stuff like that, because he went on to do work with J.J. Abrams and work on the title credits for Force Awakens and do some of the 3D stuff in there with the planet stuff. It's like, I feel like it's a time now where like that stuff doesn't work. We're in the information age. This is the age of information. It's the internet, and sharing information is key. And this is people who do this will be rewarded, and this is the way of it.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
I think those old days of like the esoteric knowledge is what always kind of had some people give a power up. It's how estate agents would make money just by selling properties because they knew things you didn't. Whereas now that you have access to the internet and you can find out for yourself, it puts everything on a more even playing field for all of us, you know? So
yeah. And it gives that next creative genius a fair shot. Like there might be artists that you would never have heard of that would have never had a fair shot because they weren't keen to that information. But now since they do have it, you're getting a whole plethora of these new artists that they're actually, finding themselves and they're finding out they're good at this stuff. And if that knowledge was kept from them, they would have never been able to, explore those routes. So I definitely think the information age is here to stay, and I would definitely say if you guys have knowledge this year, definitely get that YouTube going that you're talking about. So I'm sure
definitely.
a lot of people have a lot they can learn from you
I'll
guys.
be competing with you soon.
Not competing, I mean, well, we can work together, collaborations on each other's pages.
All right, cool, man.
All right, well, I think, we'll leave it there and I'll probably see you on Twitter.
Yeah, 100%. Follow me on Twitter at /Jonathan Winbush. Same with YouTube, just /Jonathan Winbush on there. And I'll catch you guys in the metaverse.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Cheers.